So, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today to the Lunch and Learn series from the Lawrence Enfield Center for Entrepreneurship at Brugge College. Hopefully, you are safe, warm, and enjoying a snow day with us and spending your lunch hour with a valuable lesson today. So, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction about the Field Center for those of you who are new. The Field Center offers a variety of services for your entrepreneurial initiatives and needs. We have our Small Business Development Center, which is open for free counseling for anyone within any phase of your business needs. We have our CUNY Startups, which services all 23 of our colleges for students. We have accelerator programs and hackathon programs and so much more to offer from them. I run co-curricular for the center, so you get workshops like these all for free. And then our Maker Hub team offers workshops in technology for Baruch students with a prototyping program with partnering with our SBDC for free prototypes. So if you are interested in any of this, check out our website and we will definitely get in touch and help you out. So today's session for our Lunch and Learn is really cool because I don't think I've ever heard of AI implemented in bringing out the potential of a team. So I'm really interested in this one. So today's session is engineering a world-class startup team, and it's being offered by BizPsych Labs. Max and Alana here will tell us a little bit more, but I'm going to do a little intro on them as well. So the dynamics and synergy are usually the words you will hear to describe a team really working well. The flow isn't by magic, right, Max? It's understanding the potential and unlocking what is there to unfold. The team at BizPsych Labs will give us some insight on how to bring out the best in your own team using their AI-powered platform. Welcome, Max and Alana. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, Marlene, thank you so much for having us. Like Marlene said, my name is Max Berwick. I am the CEO and co-founder of BizPsych Labs. Alana Duffy, our CTO, is joining us today as well. I know that we have a free trial. I just wanted to go over the free trial so everybody knows what to expect. Later on today, you'll be receiving an email from BizPsych Labs, from Max at BizPsych Labs. So just be on the lookout for that. That email is going to take you into your free trial and through the onboarding process. Onboarding process is fairly simple, takes about 20 minutes, and we'll talk about that some more as we go through our conversation. All right, I'm just getting a timer started, guys. Okay, so let's start with this, right? We all know, I'm assuming most of us are either entrepreneurs or interested in startups, and we hear investors talking all the time that we don't necessarily invest in the products, we invest in the teams behind those products, that we invest in people, right? And so the question really is, what makes a great startup team? What are the dynamics? And I'm sure some of you have heard of some personality tests, and we're going to be covering that today. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover a few different factors, right? We're going to start today by discussing the facets that make a team great, right? We're going to talk about the science of personality and how AI fits into the science of personality. And lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to go through an interactive exercise that is really similar to something that the platform offers, right? So in a nutshell, what we do is we use artificial intelligence to understand team dynamics and personality and design customized coaching programs that bring out the best in both you and the team, right? And the way that we do this is we look at language samples and we look over about a couple hundred words to understand more about your personality. And when we think of, so let's think of this, right? Let's think of what makes a team great, right? And there are a couple of different facets that we can all agree upon, that the research agrees upon, that if these teams have these facets, they're likely to succeed, right? And one of those facets is resilience. Now, as founders, we fail fairly often, right? We might have to pivot. We might try to hire somebody and they say no, or we have some code that isn't working, or our sales strategy isn't working, or we're not achieving product market fit. And if you're a founder, I would assume that you're failing at least once a week, and those failures are fairly significant, right? And the question is, how do you overcome those failures? How do you deal with that, right? And that's what resilience is. Resilience is the ability to overcome failures and setbacks quickly. And I say quickly because as founders or having a startup venture, you have to be able to overcome those failures rather quickly without getting stuck in the emotional blowback of the failure or getting stuck in your head, right? And so when we think about resilience, when we do an analysis of resilience, right, there are different facets, right, that make up resilience as a total, right? So we might look at things like, how optimistic is this team? How optimistic are the people on the team? We look at something called positive reinterpretation, which is the ability to learn lessons from failure. Now, I want to draw out some distinctions here when we're talking about this idea, right? A lot of people would say that, and the way they deal with failure, and this might be you, it's been me in the past, right? Is we look at a failure in the past and we say something along the lines of, you know what, that was meant to be. It influenced my life in this great way. And because of that, I'm okay with this failure. And that's really not positive reinterpretation. What that is giving meaning to a failure so that way it doesn't seem meaningless, right? That's totally different than positive reinterpretation when we're thinking about resilience. Positive reinterpretation is instead, I'll give you guys an example, right? Is let's say Lana and I were trying to hire somebody, right? And we went and we invited this person to join our team and they said no, right? And we're upset. We wanted this person to join the team. Maybe they don't want to join the team because the startup isn't good enough. Maybe our product isn't good enough, right? And so instead of sitting in those kinds of thoughts, positive reinterpretation would allow us to say, okay, this person didn't join our team, not because anything to do with our startup, but they're just the wrong fit. They're risk averse. They have a family that they need to pay for this family to live. And so they can't deal with the challenges of being in a startup, right? So this is resilience in a nutshell. I know that I'm going very quickly through these traits. We have a fairly limited amount of time. And so if you're interested more in the science behind the AI and understanding a lot more about personality sciences, you can go onto our website and look up the resources, and there you'll find an entire research library that will go into greater detail. And if you have questions, I'll do my best at the end to answer those questions, but obviously there are some limitations here, and the science is fairly complex, right? Another facet that makes up great teams, and this is so critically important, is something that we term innovativeness, but it's called, in other circles, it's called psychological safety, right? And we might ask ourselves, well, why is psychological safety important for innovation? Why is that important for creativity? Why do we need that as a startup team? Why should we be concerned about something like that, right? Well, this idea comes to us from Google's Project Aristotle, which is really the longest study of team dynamics and what makes teams great. And a critical component of the study was that the teams that were being studied were coming from different job functions. So the lessons learned apply both to the sales team and to the engineering team. So we can't say, well, psychological safety doesn't matter for engineers. It matters for everybody, right? And at the heart of psychological safety is trust, right? How much do I trust the people that I'm working with? How safe are they to be around, right? And I'll give you an example. I think mostly all of us have had an experience like this, right? Maybe we didn't tell somebody an idea of ours because we didn't trust that that person was going to listen to us, or maybe they were going to reject that idea out of hand, right? Or maybe we didn't tell somebody that they were wrong, right? That we knew that they were wrong, but we didn't tell them because, maybe they weren't going to listen to us, or their reaction didn't really serve the team, right? And so when we think of psychological safety, we think, do I trust these people, right? And more than do I trust them, right? Can I share my ideas with them? And we can see naturally how this bleeds into ideas of creativeness and innovation, because at the heart of innovation and creativeness is the idea of trust, right? And from our perspective, what we're doing, and this is how we apply artificial intelligence in these types of questions, is when we do our analysis, we're able to see how likely your team is and how likely you are to exhibit these kinds of behaviors, right? Now, we know how much you trust each other on the team. We know how likely you are to positively reinterpret the situation, or your level of optimism. And instead of us just telling you, hey, you are a 6 out of 10 on optimism, like a lot of other personality tests do, like say something like Myers-Briggs puts you into a category, we take the information and we turn that into customized coaching programs for everybody on your team, right? So we're going to teach you how to positively reinterpret a situation, right? And some of that stuff comes in the forms of videos, some of it's articles, and some of it's an activity like we're going to do in a few minutes, right? So the next thing that we'll cover is the personality sciences and artificial intelligence, to give you an idea of where all this comes from, right? So initially, personality testing comes from the US Army, and the US Army was trying to figure out how to categorize people quickly and get them into job functions. We see that history still playing out a lot in personality testing, in how personality tests currently put people onto teams, right? So we have that with things like predictive index. We look at something like Myers-Briggs and we ask ourselves questions as if it was a horoscope, how likely am I to fit with these people, right? And that really isn't in my opinion, the best way to use these systems, right? Our particular branch of artificial intelligence is natural language processing, right? And natural language processing looks at the relationship of words, right? And what that means about personality. And I'll give you a little bit of history on this. And this guy is fascinating. His name is James Pennebaker. And he started his research in the late 70s, early 80s. And what he started to do was look at the relationship between different sentence structure, word choices, and how that related to personality. And to be clear, when we think about personality, right? Personality isn't who you are, right? That idea has to be established, right? Personality is how likely you are to exhibit a specific behavior, right? So I'll give you an example of this, right? Extroversion is a real popular discussion, right? We like extroversion so much. We think extroversion is so important that we actually have to defend introverts, right? That's not the way of looking at this type of a characteristic, right? Instead, extroversion is just the likelihood that you will exhibit extroverted behavior. That doesn't mean because you're an introvert, you can't act in an extroverted way. It just means that that might not be your preference, right? And also, it's really important to understand that when it comes to personality, there are no good or bad traits, right? So, if we look at a personality test, like a Myers-Briggs personality test, that doesn't really mean anything good or bad. It just means that these are something that you're likely to do, right? So going back to James Pennebaker's work, right? He starts studying this relationship between words and begins to understand that this also has a relationship to trauma. And he develops a word counting system that we see in a lot of the modern day artificial intelligence. And I'll give an example so we can see how this plays out today, right? Okay, so we all know about targeted advertising, right? We think the phone is listening to us, and because it's listening to us, it's giving us these very specific ads. Well, maybe that's happening, but what we definitely do know is happening is that large tech companies are using systems similar to ours to read the different words that you're using and then categorize you into different personality types. And then we know that based off of X personality type, you're more likely to buy Y product, or that X type of an advertisement is more likely to have you behave in a certain way that's positive to the advertiser. And I really think it's important to note something that for us as a company, one of our guiding principles was to say that data shouldn't just be used to sell products, right? These are incredibly powerful systems. And the question really becomes, how do we start using data to improve our quality of life, right? Instead of just buying a product, how can we use that information to gain deeper self-knowledge? How can we use that information to improve our relationships with everybody on our team? How can we use that information to improve the relationships with people that are the most important to us, right? So going back to how these tools or natural language processing is used, we also saw this in 2016 with the election controversy, where Facebook sold this data and then personalities were analyzed, and so that the thought was that voters were influenced by people using personality information. So there's a lot of skepticism about personality sciences, whether they are accurate or not. But given the use cases, we know that there is a level of accuracy in these tools, right? What I want to do next is go through an activity. And this activity is going to be something that both relates to psychological safety and to resilience. And your team may get an activity like this, right? But I wanted to give you a sample of what receiving coaching from a piece of artificial intelligence is like. That given your language sample, we might be able to give you something like this, and it could change your team dynamics. So what I'm going to ask is that you get something to write with. Maybe you could handwrite this, or maybe you could, just open a window in the background. You could, you don't have to keep looking at my face. And we're going to go through a series of questions, and some of these questions are going to be kind of personal, right? And if you want, at the end, I'm happy to take somebody through this process. And if you don't want to do that, that's completely fine, considering this is recording, and we don't really know each other, and you didn't sign up for that kind of intrusion, right? So again, I want to reiterate that if you do this kind of an activity with your teammates, you will build trust with them, right? Your psychological safety will increase, right? And your ability to overcome failure will improve. And this is just one of the skill sets that makes teams great, right? So the first thing we're going to do is, I want you to think of a failure, right? Maybe it's something that's happened this week. Maybe it's something that happened, a few weeks ago. Maybe it's something that happened today, right? And I want you to write down what went wrong, okay? So I'll give you, for us, we'll use the example in this situation of Lana and I trying to hire a new salesperson, okay? For you, writing could be failing a test. It could be a line of code didn't work during launch. A distributor shut down. A pandemic happened, right? It could be any kind of situation that created a failure, right? And so I want you to write down what happened. Okay. The next question is, what does this failure mean about me or my team, right? And this is kind of an emotional, can be somewhat of an ugly question, right? But I want you to be honest as you're answering it. And I'll give you an example, okay? So Lana and I, we knew that there was this great salesperson that had an incredible reputation, and we wanted them to help us with product distribution. And then we went and asked them to join our team, and they said no. And after they said no to us, I went and thought, listen, our startup isn't going to be successful. I knew that our product wasn't as strong as I thought it was. This person doesn't want to join our team because they don't think they're going to have a chance to make money, that the opportunity to work with us isn't as promising as, we think it is. I should have just continued practicing law instead of, going down the route of entrepreneurship, right? So write down the ugly yet honest thoughts that occur when we all fail, right? I'll give everybody another few seconds to do that. The next question is, what were your expectations, right? So for us in this hypothetical situation, we expected that this person was going to be excited about working with us, that they were just going to say yes, that they were going to know how valuable of a company we were. We walked into this situation expecting a yes and not expecting a no, right? And these questions are so important because ultimately team dynamics come back to understanding ourselves and our teams. And again, the purpose of the software is to gain these insights and to learn more about ourselves, which then drives better teams. So the question is, what were your expectations? The next question is, were your expectations reasonable? Why or why not? Right? And here, we're going to use real logical, rational analysis. So were our expectations reasonable that this person should want to join our team? Well, in hindsight, they were unreasonable. We didn't account for the fact that this person is the sole breadwinner for their family, that they need to have salary instead of just commission, that they are a risk-averse person. So we walked in expecting them to say yes without doing a truly critical analysis of whether this person was a good match for our team, right? The next question is or it's really more of a directive, which is reevaluate what actually went wrong, right? By removing the expectations, right? So, did this person reject us because of anything to do with our company or us personally or the quality of our product? No, right? They rejected us because, and we failed because, it was really a bad fit. And honestly, this goes back to our ability to critically think. And, again, this might have even come back to, the fact that there was an issue in communication and, we weren't communicating effectively, right? And so the next step would be to develop a new strategy, right? And developing that new strategy could look something like this. Well, we know that when hiring, we need to have more clarity in our on our Indeed write-up, right? We need to be very specific, and also during the initial vetting process, so we don't waste any of our time, we bring up these issues on the first phone call, so that way we know whether this person is a good fit for our company or not, right? Now, if you participated and went through this process, my question is, do you still feel the same way about the failure that you first wrote down, right? Do you see or have you gained insights into that failure, which changes your strategy? And you might still be disappointed. It still might be frustrating, but in essence, it's in the past in a different kind of a way, right? And so going back to the idea of this software, right? We're not magicians. We can't magically say, hey, read this one thing and your team is going to have the greatest dynamics. And we can't go to people and say, listen, given X analysis, this team is going to be the most successful. It's going to be the next Steve Jobs, right? But what we can say is that from an analysis, right, where you go through 10 questions that last, less than 20 minutes, we can tell you with a fair degree of certainty, these are the factors that your team needs to work on to be more resilient, right? These are the factors that you're going to need to learn about to have a greater degree of psychological safety. And I apologize for not going into greater detail on all the different facets that make up a great team, but it's a fairly long list, and all that is on the website. But the key takeaways here to understand is that the two most important facets for your team to be successful, right? Number one are resilience, which really looks at your ability to positively reinterpret situations, or your level of optimism, right? And things like psychological safety, which is how much do you trust your teammates, right? And with that, I really wanted to open this up for questions. And if anybody wanted to go through that process and ask specific questions, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Max, thank you for that. Ronil would actually go through this activity live with you, and I'm gonna go ahead and unmute him because I know that you said we'd be able to do that. And then we will take any other questions in the chat.
Okay, so all right, so where
did he go?
Hey, how's it going?
There he is.
Hey, I'm just looking for you on the grid. Oh, here you are. Okay, nice, great picture. Okay, so let's start. And if you don't mind, right? I'm gonna press you a little bit with questions to see how well we can articulate it. And the greater detail we go into, the more this is gonna help everybody else that's listening. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Are you an entrepreneur?
No, but I have intentions to become one after I graduate college.
Great. What year are you?
I would say about a sophomore.
Okay.
About
Okay.
1 more year, I think.
Okay. All right. So what was the failure? What happened?
Oh, so it's class related. I had repeated math 2009, but I was never I had good grades. Like in the class, I had about 85, 87 GPA. So when I'm repeating it now, and I'm just I'm going through the same thing, and on the quiz, the first quiz for the class, I failed the practice. I passed the actual test, but I think I got lazy due to that failing, the practice. I just felt like I got lazy.
Okay. So is the failure, what went wrong was you failed this test? Am I hearing you right?
Yeah. Well, I saw that from the practice I needed to improve, but the failure was that, and I realized is I think at times I'm lazy. So when it comes to being an entrepreneur, me thinking about that, I know that it's something I have to work on. So
Okay. So okay, so I'm going to slow it down. So what it sounds like is the failure was this exam, and that what you're telling yourself is that you're lazy,
yeah.
right? Am I hearing you right?
Yeah.
And that the other part of it is not only are you lazy, but that laziness is going to negatively impact you on your entrepreneurial journey. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Okay. And so when it came to the exam, what were you expecting? Were you expecting to just walk in and do well on the exam without studying? Like, can you tell me more about that?
Well, yeah, I didn't study, but I expected to get like 100. So it's like,
Okay. Okay. So can we say that walking in and not studying for an exam was an unreasonable expectation?
yeah.
Okay. And so why was that unreasonable?
Um, well, part of it is because like I felt like since I repeated the course, like even though like I know all the material, so I'm like, oh, like that kind of ego got in my way. I'm like, oh, I don't care. Like,
Okay.
uh, I'm just gonna do it, even though I still pass. I just don't want to have that kind of mindset. And I
Yeah.
felt that was a failure for myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
I get it. I get it. So it's not only are the questions of yourself are laziness, right? But that in essence something was wrong in the way that you were approaching this, which was the expectation that you were going to do well just because you had done well in the past, right?
yeah,
And like, I can see how when you're talking about that, going into entrepreneurship with that kind of an expectation that you're just going to do well is a recipe to fail. That doesn't really mean anything about you. It just means that the expectation doesn't work, right? And so if you were going to reevaluate this, right, you know, would you say that is it you as a person were lazy walking into this, or that you didn't appreciate the level of difficulty in the situation?
um, I think it was like the level of difficulty. Maybe it was a spatial between me not like being in the prior math 2009,
Yeah.
wasn't
And
doing anything over the summer, and then now I'm here again, and it's like still new because I'm not like this big person in math. It's because I took the course, so I kind of already know the material.
yeah, I get you, and I understand. I am not a math. I would not count myself as a mathematician either, so I understand. But when we're thinking of the failure reevaluation, I want to point out something key that we really we kind of breezed over. But first thing you said to me was, that you were lazy and you were concerned about your laziness. But then when we started talking about it, it wasn't really your laziness. It was a miscalculation of your expectations of the situation, that it was going to be easier than it was. So it's not about you personally, your laziness. It's about a misunderstanding of the problem that you were facing. That makes sense of how this kind of a system works as far as reinterpreting the situation?
Yeah, it actually made me clarify what it was actually, honestly.
That's awesome. Okay. And do you still feel that, like, do you feel, thinking of that situation, that failure, do you feel a little bit differently about it?
Yeah, I actually do. I think like to not be so hard on myself and to just just practice and just try, practice, give some time towards it.
Yeah. On that note, and like being an entrepreneur myself, and just for everybody else who's on the entrepreneurial journey, is I think that the one of the biggest problems is the expectation of the around the difficulty of the situations that you're going to face. They're far more difficult than you initially think, and so that, just like Ronell was talking about, the expectation led to the failure. It wasn't anything personal, right? So one of the keys ideas here is don't take things personally if you can. And again, going back to the software and the discussion, right? And I think this is I hope the message is being conveyed the right way, which is, you know, wouldn't it be incredible, or isn't it incredible, that a piece of artificial intelligence can understand enough about us to help us to gain insights into the way that we're approaching situations that don't work, and then give us specialized coaching to deal with that? And then again, thinking of the idea of team dynamics, teams are a series of relationships and how people work together, right? And if we're in our own head and we're thinking a certain way about a situation, then there's no possibility for real collaboration. And then that drives down innovation. Then your products aren't as user-centric or as novel, right? So these concepts, we might take them for granted, but what we're advocating here is for companies to really start focusing on the relationships and the dynamics to drive performance, right? So, want to go into questions?
Sure. So Tim is asking, can we implement your concept during the hiring phase? Does the program allow for us to say this opportunity will not be a great fit for you? Or do we use your software to improve current employees' morale?
So in the current build, so the access that you're getting right now, we would suggest using that, not necessarily for hiring. We would say it would be better for, improving morale. I would say relationships rather than morale, because yes, morale is a component, but it's the relationships that drive the feelings that are going on within the organization. You can use the system to see whether a new person, how that's going to impact the dynamics, but I wouldn't solely rely on that, considering, and this is the main premise of what we're saying, is you can change the dynamics. So like in the past with personality tests, it was a snapshot in time, right? It was one thing and you fit into this box and these boxes fit together, right? Or they fit together or they don't. What we're saying is, yes, people fit into certain boxes, but we want to see how we can make those boxes work together and become a team, right? So I would suggest more of a focus is once you've onboarded somebody to have them start using the product, right? And have that as part of the standard in your company's culture.
I'm recognizing within these 5 questions, mixed directives, I could use it in the classroom to have students reevaluate what their road was through a project or an exam, the way Ronell was talking about how he was disappointed in himself. But that is not necessarily the case. It's not disappointment in yourself. Your disappointment is in your action. And that action doesn't define you. And I'm thinking about my own children. They're 5 and 8, and my 8-year-old gets very upset when he doesn't do well on something, and then he takes it out on himself and takes it very personal. And so I'm finding that I may use these steps and just say, okay, let's talk about it in a very logical and structured way to sort of redefine his own thinking. I could definitely see this in the workplace, but I can see this being worked in a school psychology office, guidance counselor, just in the classroom. So students can have take the personal out of it, like you said, and be a little bit more actionable and not let it be the way you prove yourself further, right? I really like this.
So adding to that, so we went through one activity, and this is one activity of hundreds, if not thousands of activities, right? And so we can see the benefit of this one, but imagine you getting months of training with programming that's specifically designed for you in the exact ways that I would say the exact ways that you need information to learn. And so, some of these things, like, to be clear, in our system, we have the artificial intelligence, and then we also have a clinical side as well, where we have clinicians that are looking at, everything from, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, different relational models, performance coaching, and you're getting all of these tools packaged into a customized coaching program for you by leveraging the power of artificial intelligence, specifically natural language processing, right?
This is really great, because I think what we fail or neglect to recognize is that every organization, every team is a mixed bag. I mean, there are different roles that require different personality traits to handle those roles. And so this would be a great tool, especially for the startups. So if there are no other questions, I want to thank you, Max, and Alana as well. I know you were a little quiet, but thank you both for being here with us today, sharing what your product can do for our entrepreneurs, and also giving us this trial as well. So I know you said you'll send out those trial emails later this afternoon. So everyone check your spam by tonight if you don't see it, or you can reach out to me and I can do some follow-up for you if you don't see that. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Hopefully you'll join us for our next Lunch and Learn session, which is March 11th. You'll get an email from me about this recording being on our website and to sign up for the next Lunch and Learn. So I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Stay warm, stay safe, be well. Bye, everyone.